Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Postmod Pod episode 3. I'm Felipe.
And I'm Lillian.
And today, as ever, we will try to make sense of current events. That is our motto, to make sense of current events.
That's right. We've
I
not
came
said
up
that
with
yet.
that. I came up with that.
No, I thought I did.
I came up with that.
I did.
I came up with all the good ideas. Baby, go low. So, why don't we get started with some icebreakers as you are keen to do?
Okay.
So, did
Have
you
you
come up
prepared
with
any?
any? No, I didn't.
Okay, well, how about what is your favorite movie?
Favorite movie by far, leagues ahead, is Gladiator.
That is a really good movie.
Mm-hmm. What about you?
I shouldn't have asked this question because I don't have one prepared. What do you think my favorite one is?
I think your favorite movie is The Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
No.
No. It's
Absolutely not.
definitely the Bruce Willis sci-fi opera singer
The
thing.
Fifth Element.
That's it
That
right
is
there.
a good movie. It
Fifth
is so
Element
good.
is the legit.
Gary Oldman,
Gary-
Mia Jovovich.
I used to think
So
his
good.
last name was Oldman, and his name was Gary Oldman. And
That
every
is
time
his
I
name.
saw him, but it's not pronounced that way.
Oh.
It's Oldman or whatever. Every time I saw him and he wasn't old, I thought it was a cheat, a lie, a deception.
I love the Gladiator soundtrack. I must say, it's so beautiful.
The waltz.
And then the vocalizing, whatever it goes.
Let me see if I can remember the battle waltz.
Dun 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 dun.
That's in the bridge, if you will.
That's Pirates of the Caribbean. I always
No,
get
is
them
it-
confused.
It
Dun 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 dun. That's Pirates of the Caribbean.
It's very similar.
So similar.
It's very similar. Dun 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 dun.
Dun 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 dun.
No.
Dun, 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 dun.
Okay,
Anyway.
so shall we just head right into
Sure.
it?
Why don't you go first today then?
I'll go first today, okay, because I got the high energy today, baby. I got
That's
the high
right.
energy. Okay, so first story today I'd like to talk about is related to the National Trust has gone through a little bit of a controversy over some of its senior members trying to placate the unwashed masses and introduce a woke agenda.
Oh, wow.
So I will read a spiked article
Okay.
titled The Woke Drift of the National Trust. The National Trust seems like an unlikely institution to be pursuing a woke agenda. But some trust members are so fed up with what they see as the charity's woke drift that they have started a campaign group to fight back. Restore Trust claimed its first victory this week when National Trust Chairman Tim Parker stepped down. Quote, "Parker's gone, but he won't be the last," end quote, a Restore Trust spokesman told The Times. Quote, "We know that there's a small group of about 3 senior management figures who have a highly woke agenda, so we're out to oust them as well," end quote. So what's so woke about the trust? Trust members haven't been forced to undergo white privilege struggle sessions. And no stately homes have been torn down or renamed. But some softer signs of wokeness are clearly visible at the charity. Most infamous has been the Trust's recent study on its properties linked to slavery and colonialism. Of course, there's nothing woke about wanting to understand more about Britain's colonial past. But when it published a study in September 2020, senior figures were well aware of how it would play into the rows over race unfolding in wider society. The study was commissioned in 2018, but the Trust sped its release in the wake of the George Floyd tragedy. John Onstay, head of culture and engagement, explicitly referenced the culture war. Quote, "This moment, the Black Lives Matter movement, has made us realize that we need to go much faster. It is the whole world realizing that we have to move more quickly."
Move more quickly to what?
End quote. Other incidents have also upset the National Trust's small c conservative membership. In April, it was revealed that all volunteers will be made to undergo, quote, unconscious bias training.
What is that?
When they return after lockdown, leading some to resign in protest.
Good.
Similarly, in 2017, staff and volunteers at the Fellbreak Hall stately home in Norfolk were made to wear rainbow badges and lanyards to celebrate the 50th anniversary of homosexuality being decriminalized. Those who didn't want to wear the rainbow symbols were taken off public-facing roles.
Jeez.
Clearly, none of this amounts to a woke apocalypse, but it does show that something is afoot in even the most conservative of institutions.
Okay.
The National Trust is not alone. There are creeping signs of wokeness in the Church of England. The Archbishop of Canterbury has embraced the decolonize movement, suggesting that artifacts linked to slavery and colonialism could be removed from churches. What was once the Tory party at prayer, that's what the Anglican Church has historically been called, is also flagellating itself over institutional racism.
Ridiculous.
State institutions that once represented authority and order have similarly taken a woke turn. The military wants to recruit snowflakes to its ranks. The police now like to drape themselves in pride flags and arrest civilians for tweeting rudely about trans issues. What all of this goes to show is that wokeness is now the default operating mode for our institutions, whatever they might have been set up to do. The more small c conservative institutions express woke ideas in more restrained, subtle ways, but it is clear a transformation is taking place beneath the surface.
So this was published today?
This
27th of
article
May.
from Spiked was published.
Yeah, today.
Yeah.
It's not news to me. I mean, I think it's obvious that the woke agenda has been making its rounds in these institutions.
I think what the article is reporting is the now total and complete victory of woke agenda across the board.
Okay.
That even small c conservative institutions like the National Trust, which it's news to me, but I didn't know it was
conservative. I didn't
conservative. I had no idea of its political inclinations, but I can see why it might be considered small c conservative because it's meant to conserve old properties. And those old properties were often held by landed gentry, aristocrats with outdated and old views. So I can see how it might be considered little c conservative. So to say that even an institution like this has been captivated or become captive to the woke agenda is to say there's a total victory now.
Okay.
And so it is now the new default normal. Mm-hmm. So the interesting question is how did it become to be this way? What is the underlying philosophic premise of the woke agenda go? What is the common factor in what was listed there? The police draping themselves in flags, the army recruiting snowflakes, the National Trust about slavery. What is the common denominator?
I think it's all about the oppressor, oppressee.
Speak closer to the mic.
So where I think that people are claiming victimhood as a status, like a forever status, that then they need to get reparations for. So no matter what you are, as long as you're a victim, then you deserve certain things.
But what are they a victim of?
Who? Which ones?
You just said that the common factor is
of the
victim
oppressors,
status.
of not having power.
But how do the oppressors victimize in these examples? Let's say the National Trust is wanting to train staff for unconscious bias.
I don't know if there is an actual thing that they are doing, but the fact
I'm not saying an actual fact. I'm saying in their constructed theory of life and of society, what is the crime that is being committed that they are trying to repent of?
That they're a part of the
fix?
majority. I think that's what it is. I just think it's majority people apologizing for being a majority.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I see it as. So
Right.
the white people have to apologize because they're white. There's no other reason. It's not like they've gone out and done anything to a minority.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, most Brits, like Lawrence Fox famously said, are nice people, very accepting, very loving, and yet just because they're white, they are told that they have a privilege that is being exerted onto the minority, and therefore they need to change. They need to let the minority become a majority, I think. And not necessarily majority in race, but majority in power.
Yeah. I would say that the common factor is that to impose a standard of good on a person is evil inherently. To impose the idea that something could be the best or
So that
something
there
to
is a
strive
standard.
for is a crime as such. So unconscious bias is basically addressing this idea that white culture is superior to other cultures, and that is inherently a crime, because to accept the idea that one culture could be better means logically it's like saying, look, one kind of nutrition is better than another kind. It is better to eat meat and vegetables as a part of your regular diet than eating fake foods and McDonald's and fast food. And to say that implies that, well, everyone should be striving to eat meat and potatoes or meat and vegetables. And to say that is to say that one nutritional approach is superior than another nutritional approach. And so unconscious bias and critical race theory specifically, is born out of the idea that to impose an objective standard of goodness is a crime, because they say things like, well, mathematics and science is inherently racist. It is the way of the white man to think in terms of scientific principles and in terms of mathematics. And they say this because the premise is all the culture that is an outgrowth of the white race, let's call it, is to impose that on other races, on blacks, on Asians, etc., is a crime. It is committing the crime of presuming that one culture is superior to another, or the crime of imposing a standard on somebody, a standard of goodness. Let's go to another example, the snowflakes. It is a crime to call somebody a snowflake because that presumes that trying to make a man masculine is a crime. It is imposing a standard of masculinity that is purported to be good and superior to femininity, or to effeminate culture or effeminate approaches to life for a man. Or let's take another example, the police draping themselves in flags. To oppose that is to claim that heteronormative culture is superior to the other culture, to the rainbow flag culture. So all these examples, what they have in common is that they are a war imposed on the notion that there can be objectively good ways of living life, that all peoples of all races and all colors should be adopting, that regardless of what race you are, it is good to be masculine and bad to be a snowflake, that no matter what race or culture you come from, heteronormative practices are better than non-heteronormative practices, or that science and math and objectivity in truth are superior than subjectivity and abject violence. So all the common factor is that basically, how dare you impose a standard? How dare you say I must colonialize myself with values that are foreign to my upbringing or to where I come from? So, for example, I'm from a third world country that doesn't have a great tradition of mathematics and science or literature or anything like that. And so for me to stand and defend a doctorate in a Western university, for me to then take up a job in a scientific endeavor is evidence ipso facto that I've colonialized myself with values that are foreign to my culture. That is what the critical theorists would say, and that
Interesting.
I've basically oppressed. That's what I've.
But that's what they want to achieve. They want people of your culture to beat everyone else.
No, they don't. The critical theorists have one goal and one goal only. It is to destroy what was previously considered the good.
Okay.
So to destroy science and mathematics, to destroy heteronormativity, to destroy toxic masculinity is what they call it, or just good masculinity. So that's why all these things are being elevated, like snowflakeness, like alphabet soupness, like
obesity,
etc. Body positivity. Or you cannot. How dare you form or impose on a child? So this whole child-led learning and child-led parenting. All these are the rejection of the previous norms, which were premised on imposing a standard on people because you knew that standard was good.
I thought that they attributed certain standards to the whites and said, whatever the whites did, we hate that. Like, I thought that's what they were doing. But you're saying that there are general standards that they don't want, they don't like, because they don't like standards at all.
Well,
I thought it was just like whatever the West created, they just hate because it's the majority and they held power for so long that they want to push against that.
Well, the root sort of psychological motive is ultimately power to become the oppressors, as it were, to become the conquerors, to become the despots and the dictators of culture and politics, etc. So they have this monolithic Western culture that is currently preeminent and currently ruling and currently deciding what is right and what is wrong, and they just merely wish to depose it. Depose it perhaps out of just a sheer desire for power. But what they've instrumented in order to win this victory, the only way they're going to win is by making the Westerners destroy themselves. And so what they've seeded the West with is a suicidal ideology, an ideology that makes Westerners themselves loathe themselves and reject themselves. They've injected a poison pill that says, actually, what you believe in science, what you believe in math, what you believe in masculinity, what you believe in heteronormativeness is all evil. And so you must reject it. And so you have the spectacle of white people finding black people on the streets and getting on their knees and apologizing, things like that. So it's genius. It's ingenious. It's so evil and genius. It's planting the seeds of destruction in the people you want to destroy so that they want to commit suicide.
So that reminds me of one of the topics that I posted. So do you want to just jump to that? And then
before we do that, I wanted to play one of Darren Grimes is a guy I follow on Twitter, and he had a commentary on it. I just want to
strip away the woke nonsense and do its damn job. Stop telling us which manicured garden of a former stately home belonging to some landed gentry at some point in his life said a racist word. As if a manicured lawn can be guilty of bigotry or something, some guff like that. Get on with what your members are paying you to do and what the public actually wants you to do, which many of us visit year in, year out, spending our hard-earned dosh to see these places that have been left in your gift for you to protect. We just want you to be getting on with your job. Enough of this nonsense. Enough of pandering to those who do not wish our nation well. Enough of pandering to those who would rather you tear down than build and protect. Do your job. It really does speak volumes, I think, to the pervasive nature of much of this wokery and whackery which has infected many of our most precious institutions. The National Trust is one of the most important of those in our country. I think that the membership that have revolted against the chair of the organisation and forced change, I hope they actually manage to get change that actually strips the National Trust back to basics so it does its damn job.
So I think we asked before we started this I asked at least, what is it that allowed or permitted wokery to take the field, basically? If we understand wokery as he suggested, which is basically the things of the West must be destroyed and replaced with new things, which are related to the minorities that have been oppressed. The question is, how did the West itself accept and uphold and defend this concept and begin to dismantle itself?
Right.
And my answer is that it leveraged a corruption of the concept of love. The concept of love used to be, you want the thing that is best for that particular entity that you love. And to determine what is best for that entity presumes that there is an objective way and an objective standard which defines what is the good for that entity. So for a human being, it is sunlight, it is water, it is nutrition, and it is virtuous values. It used to be thought for a mammal in the sea, like a whale, it is good food, it is wide-ranging ability to swim the oceans, and no interference from man, for example. These are the things that objectively we can decide, we can identify are the good things necessary for a successful life. Because you love the thing, you therefore want that thing to be achieved. Critical theory destroys that concept of love and says, actually, love is love. You've heard the phrase, love is love. And it's made it so that whatever the entity says it wants for itself is the good. Whatever that entity says it wants for itself is the good. So for if a growing young boy or a man says, I want to be a coward and I want to cry at everything and I want to shirk my duties and hide under the couch, then our duty out of love is to encourage that and say, we accept and we love you and we will let you do that. So that,
yeah, I think more an example that I think more people would see very plainly is a child who says they want to have candy all day.
yes.
Only eat candy.
Yes. Out of love, you must give the child what it has decided it wants and what it thinks is good for itself. And so that corruption, it leverages the whole Christian heritage, right? Because if God is love, how dare you deny love for the entity? So it's a very sly, very underhanded, packaged lie in the concept of love. Love is just accept and promote what the person wants. So you can't possibly disagree with somebody because that would be unloving. You must affirm. So hence when all the heresies and corruptions that entered the church, such as women should preach or same-sex marriages should be blessed, and contrary to the Bible, it was said to disagree with such perspectives is unloving. Love requires that we affirm. Does that ring a bell?
It's
right?
totally pervasive and perverted. It has perverted what love is.
Correct. So all these institutions, because they've inherited the old concept of love without its bulwark of defense, which is a real Christian faith and a real Christian courage to stand up for the truth. All they're left with is a weak, inherited concept of love that was easily corrupted, that was easily pushed over and pushed aside, and said, actually, love is affirming. Love is love. Love is to affirm whatever a person wants. And that is, you grab anyone on the street, anyone in a common walk of life, and that has won the day. For these institutions to have lost to critical theory, the individuals all across our culture, all across the West, have themselves lost the war and accepted this new definition of love, at least subconsciously. And so the war to take back objectivity begins with the war of redefining, or not redefining, but re-acknowledging the true definition of love, which is love is to desire the thing that is good for the thing. And that is the thing that's good for the thing is objectively identifiable and easily easily arrived at. And you must have the courage and the boldness to adhere to that. And that's it,
something
basically.
that in the Christian tradition, especially in the ones that I grew up in, like the Pentecost, not I grew up in, but I was in during university, is this idea that the will of God is some obscure subjective thing that only God will speak directly to you. And I feel like that's related because no, in fact, the will of God is very plain and very clear. There's no mystery behind it. You read your Bible and it tells you what is good and what to pursue. And that there's no I'm not saying there's no special will, but the importance is that I just feel like I knew so many people in the Christian faith that were just waiting around, not doing anything spiritually, because they wanted God to speak directly to them and tell them this subjective will that he had for them.
Yeah, but God's will is clearly manifest,
Yes.
objectively identifiable.
Exactly.
It's not a mystery. Okay, so let's move on to story 2. That's enough of that. Story 2 from the BBC headline says, is it Batley or Bately? I can't.
Which one?
Batley. How do you pronounce it? Batley school protests. Teacher allowed back in Prophet Muhammad image row. They like that word row. We didn't used to use that in the U.S.
Not really.
A teacher who was suspended after showing children a caricature of the Prophet Muhammad can return to the classroom. Protests were held outside Batley Grammar School after the teacher showed an image during a religious studies lesson in March.
Oh, I remember that.
An independent investigation found the teacher did not intend to cause offense by showing the image. The school said it would offer more guidance and training for staff. The image was shown on more than one occasion to students during lessons earlier this year, the investigation found. Demonstrators gathered outside the school gates on 2 occasions, with some calling for the teacher to be sacked. In an executive summary of the report, the trust said teaching staff, quote, genuinely believed that using the image had an educational purpose and benefit, end quote. But the trust said it recognized that using the image did cause, quote, deep offense to a number of students, parents, and members of the school community, adding that it, quote, deeply regrets the distress caused. Okay, so let's hear some reflections on it from a radio show that I like listening to sometimes.
Talk radio.
Which is Talk Radio.
Across so many institutions in
Hang
this
on, let me
country.
rewind it.
It's despicable what has happened to the school teacher at Batley Grammar. Utterly despicable. And it really casts a shadow of shame across so
Brendan
many
O'Neill.
institutions in this country. He was abandoned by his school. He was abandoned by the teaching unions. The supposedly liberal commentariat didn't say very much. They turned their backs. They didn't care. And this is a man who, according to his father, is broken and devastated and still in hiding because he's getting death threats from religious extremists. I'm afraid that the people who fail to stand up for this teacher and his freedom of speech should be utterly ashamed of themselves. You know, thankfully, a union of bin men in the Batley area have stood up for him and have defended him, and we need more of that kind of action. But I think what this case really shows is that the supposedly liberal elites don't really believe in liberty anymore, and they're willing to cast a good school teacher to the wolves just because he caused offence to them. It's despicable.
So I didn't know that a union of bin men, that is like garbage men, stood up for him. Way to go for the working class. I just find so much encouragement from the working class. So yeah, basically, as the article and the radio and Brendan O'Neill, who works for Spike actually, stated, this guy got in a lot of trouble, protests happened, and I think he got suspended, but then now reinstated. But that everyone basically turned their back on him. Basically,
and I can
no
imagine
one
him feling extremely
betrayed and
scared
abandoned. So related to our first story, the common denominator here is, of course, that one group of people declare that something is good, and we must affirm. Basically, everyone must affirm that thing.
Yeah, and if you don't,
it's unloving,
right?
And in some countries illegal, right? So I think I have 2 thoughts on this. First, that I respect the concept of not publishing an image out of a sort of pious mentality. I can understand that. I think we have a long tradition within the Christian faith of battles for iconography and iconoclasm. So I can understand all the controversy around publishing images of holy figures. So if, for example, the polite thing to do would have been in that class to say, we're going to show an image of this. You are free to leave the classroom if it offends you. Warn the parents, say, hey, we're gonna show an image of this as part of the instruction, etc. So I wouldn't be opposed to such an approach, but I would be opposed to the idea that it should be illegal to offend people, and that's what I think is happening here. What the parents and the students who protested want is for it to be illegal to do such a thing. I can understand that being the case in a majority Muslim country, and it is illegal in majority Muslim countries, but this isn't a majority Muslim country. But what we see from this event and the response by the leadership of the school and the press, etc., is that they're not willing to stand up for the fact that this isn't a Muslim country. That if the Muslims of this country want to impose their understanding of what should be legal or illegal on the rest of the country, no one stands in their way, basically.
I think the truth is that people are afraid of these religious extremists because they are known to have physically hurt people, cut their heads off,
killed them, yes,
throw them off buildings.
Yeah,
you don't have Christian religious extremists going around cutting people's heads off. So I think there's a true fear if you offend them, that you're in danger. And
yeah, but I think if there was a robust response from Parliament all the way down to MPs, all the way down to the police force that said, we will stand up for the right to offend no matter what and aggressively persecute anyone who thinks they're going to kill or hurt someone who's offended, then we'd have a different story. But what we have instead is no comment, no defense of the teacher from the school, no defense of the teacher from MPs, no defense of the teacher from the police force, no defense from Parliament. It's just silence at best, at worst, criticism of the man. And it takes the bin men. Only the bin men stand up for this guy locally. So there is a shockingly low level of masculinity in the response to this. What is masculinity? It is the ability to resist force. That's one aspect of masculinity, is to meet force with force, to meet resistance with resistance. And so a society that has a healthy level of masculinity would have met this protest and this critique with protest and with resistance itself, but it hasn't. And that's I think the prevailing story here. And I think it has something to do with, again, the corruption of love is love. That it is offensive and controversial and scandalous to say that actually it is good that we have the right to offend, and it is proper, and we will go all the way to the courts and we will impose force to defend such a right. No one's saying that. No one's doing that because they're all, as you said, they're afraid for their lives, which I can understand, but they also don't understand that if they capitulate. So we've had a long series of capitulations to this, many stories of protests of this nature in the West and capitulations. So this is just a continuation.
But I also think that it has to do with the fact that they're a minority. It's because that they're minorities. So then you have to, the majority has to protect. And...
No, but why is it even a concept that the minorities have to be placated?
Because they're the vulnerable.
No, but why is that even an accepted premise? Because the seed of self-loathing has already been sown in the West. If you had, let's call it arrogance, not arrogance, but a confidence in your own culture. Mm-hmm. If you loved and admired. This is not saying it's perfect or without flaw or without sin, but this is merely saying, I'm proud of my culture. It is a good culture. It has lots of good things to offer, and it is worth defending and persevering. If you had a culture that believed that, then it wouldn't fall prey to, oh, they're in the minority. Why? Because that wouldn't by itself be sufficient for them to capitulate.
I don't know. I don't know. I'm not understanding you, I think. Because wouldn't the majority culture want to protect the vulnerable and the weak? And
No, that's just the reason why it seems self-evident to you. Why the mantra or this, if you encounter the situation where there's a majority culture and a minority culture, and the minority culture objects to something, and you therefore naturally and almost unquestionably conclude, well, the majority has to accommodate.
no, we don't have to accommodate.
But protect or
Yeah.
acquiesce or do something to condescend. The reason why you think that's a given is because the landscape is such that the majority culture feels guilty about itself. So I'll give you a different example. Let's say in a different what context could I give you? Let's say in a football team, a sports team, and let's say that the majority are diligent about getting to practice, but there's a couple of them that have been missing practice, and they say, practice is too hard for me. I just can't make it so often.
No,
Listen to me. Let the example play itself out. But these footballers, they're proud about their work ethic. They're proud about the culture they've established in the team. They're not going to be like, well, okay, I feel sorry for you. You're the minority. We'll let you not practice as much because you're the minority. So to them, that there's a minority that is failing to meet the standard, that wants something different, doesn't by itself mean that they should capitulate, that they should condescend, that they should accommodate.
I don't know. That example, it has to do with their work ethic. So,
But that's a cultural level. That's a cultural value, you see. And so in this example, the cultural value of having the right to offend is a cultural value. And they're objecting to that cultural value. The minority is. And you're saying, isn't it natural then that the majority culture should try to condescend? And I'm telling you that the reason why it feels like it should be natural is because unlike the football club, who is proud of its values, the West isn't proud of its values. Period.
I understand that. I agree with that, but I don't see. I'm trying to understand your presentation of this whole thing from another perspective. So from the people who are snowflakes, let's say, I'm trying to understand you from their perspective.
So where does the analogy break down with the football club? Why does it break down in your view?
Because that is like a personal choice that they've not done the right thing. They've not worked out. They've not done the thing that you have to do to be a good team.
But you see what you've said there. What you've said is that you've acknowledged that there's an objective, verifiable basis for the value of practice.
Right. Yeah.
Right? So you acknowledge that.
So if you're talking about the right to offend, I agree. Yes. But I thought we were talking about...
But the West doesn't acknowledge that the right to offend is a verifiable, worthy value to defend.
I see.
You see? Because they're no longer proud of their inheritance. It used to be a right that you would die for, that you would war for, that you would defend, that you would not bulk, that you would not, step back 1 inch from.
Well, but what about, there's a story that Mike Rowe was talking about his friend that had a big stutter.
Yep.
And the teacher made fun of that student.
Okay.
And, I mean, he offended that child. Are you going to defend his right to offend that child?
So
So I think that teacher should be sacked because he did the wrong thing.
yeah,
He picked on a vulnerable.
Sure, certainly. So, in that example, I would say so. It shouldn't be illegal for what the teacher did.
No.
It is impolite and perhaps and even evil what he did, but
Right.
not illegal.
Correct.
So he should be sacked for the immorality of it.
Yeah, for him being a bad teacher.
Because we can objectively identify, in this instance, that to prey on the vulnerable
Right.
and to poke fun at something that someone can't, at that stage at least, control.
Right. So let's say, now imagine these students who are Muslim and they're a part of a minority community,
Yes.
and their peers maybe don't understand them,
Yeah.
you know, and so then for someone to maybe offend their
Yeah.
God is picking on the vulnerable.
So this
isn't
is
it?
why I said I would be open to the teacher saying, "Hey, I'm giving you a heads up. I'm going to publish this thing. I'm going to give a lesson on this. Feel free to take your student out if you need to because you think it's offensive. But I'm going to give an object lesson on the right to offend. And I'm going to do that, and I'm going to try to do that without, as much as I can, without showing you that my intent isn't just to offend you primarily." See, that teacher that made fun of the stutter, he wasn't creating an object lesson for a bigger principle to convey something to the classroom even. He was just preying on that, indulging.
Who knows? Maybe he wanted to encourage the other students to not stutter. You know, to say this is not a good habit to have, something like that.
I don't think so. I mean, anyway, it's a hearsay story that someone else told. But I think the whole point is that as long as we're talking about moral standards now, not legal standards. So judging the teacher morally, if it is evident that his intent is to give an object lesson on the right to offend, how I think that was the whole point. That was the whole point.
I didn't think so. I thought he was teaching about the religion or something and saying that maybe this is how people view him. And
I think the article quoted that all the staff and even the head teachers agreed that it was a worthy thing to do. So on the other hand, if that teacher on a daily basis brought a poster of Muhammad, I'm just giving you a counter example, right? If that teacher brought in a daily picture of the Prophet with the purpose of offending the students, then I would say that's immoral, not illegal, but immoral.
Yeah.
So if
everyone agrees with that.
So I think the whole point is that I think this teacher, from all appearances, had a just motive, a useful motive in giving this lesson.
Right.
And instead of recognizing that, the parents protested, which I understand, and it is their right. I don't object to their protest. And in the face of that protest, no one stood up for that teacher.
Oh, okay.
Okay? So they all uniformly capitulated and did not defend him one bit.
And that's where you think it went wrong.
That's where I think it went wrong.
Right.
Completely. Is that there's no backbone and there's no love of the inheritance and values that the West has stood for ages.
Yeah, there's no backbone. They're not going to stand up against that because they're afraid they're going to get their heads cut off.
Yeah, but there is space to argue for the morality of such a tactics. So the Bible always teaches that even if a thing is good, it might not be expedient. Even if a thing can be done, doesn't mean it should be done. So St. Paul talks about when he was with Jews, he became a Jew. When he was with Gentiles, he became a Gentile. So with things indifferent, he became those people so that he might win some. So if it was a Christian teacher and he's trying to win some Muslims to a different faith, clearly bringing in a poster of the Prophet Muhammad is not the best way to do that.
Right.
So I think there's space to argue for the utility and the morality of such a tactic, but legally, and if the teacher did it with good intentions, morally, he should be defended. And I'm embarrassed and ashamed that it took binmen to do it, and only binmen.
Yeah.
Okay, so and then third and last story for me is, let's see, here we go. It is related to a petition. It's your favorite topic, COVID, the one you want to talk about 24 hours a day.
No.
It's a petition submitted to Parliament about COVID, and the petition reads, title is Prevent COVID Vaccine Rollout to Children. And it says, evidence suggests children rarely develop serious illness from COVID, and most adults will soon be vaccinated, reducing overall transmission. Long-term safety data of the vaccines are unknown, and emerging data shows younger people are more likely to get side effects from COVID vaccine. Rushing, unwise. I presume that means rushing is unwise. And the government responded, this petition was rejected. And in answer to the question, why was the petition rejected, the government answers, it is not clear what the petition is asking the UK government or Parliament to do. Clearly, it's petitioning to not roll out, not mandate vaccines to children. We understand you're concerned about vaccinating children against COVID-19. However, there are currently no plans to offer the vaccine to children, so we're not sure what you mean by rushing. The Joint Committee on Vaccines and Immunization has confirmed it has begun studying evidence on the safety of COVID-19 vaccines on children. So in the second paragraph, it says there are no plans of testing children. By the way, we're testing children. So that was interesting. It's not related to the first two topics.
It's just disgusting.
It's the government.
So Jeremy Hunt just was on video suggesting that we should roll out vaccines
to children.
In Parliament.
Yeah.
Did you see that video?
No, I didn't.
It's a very brief, just him posing the question if we should.
Do you want to roll it?
Yeah. Jeremy Hunt.
As you do that, I wanted to just getting back to our first two stories. There was a tweet that was really funny, which kind of shows why the critical theory doesn't work when you're white. So this person says, quote, I blame my failures in life on the fact that I have to look out at a Norman castle every day. It's a symbol of French imperialism. I live in a town with a Roman name. I am constantly reminded of Italian colonialism. My life is ruined by Viking colonialism and Danish imperialism. So this is an English person, basically, clearly, saying that, they've been conquered by the Normans, the Romans, the Danes, and the Vikings. But they have no currency to claim that they are victims of oppression. Why? Because they are the ones in power now. And the whole point of critical theory is to destroy who is in power.
Exactly.
And it has weaponized love for that purpose. Okay.
All right, here's a video. Jeremy Hunt tweets, time to vaccinate children. My question to @Nadhim Zahawi today in the comments. So let me pull this up here.
Can I congratulate the Minister for the outstanding rollout of the vaccine programme, which is a source of enormous pride to all of us on all sides of the House. As we emerge from lockdown, we all want it to be a permanent change. And for most families, the biggest priority is to make sure that schools remain open, even if we find that new variants arrive in the UK in the course of the autumn. We know that children don't tend to get bad symptoms, but they can spread the virus. So is it time to look at vaccinating the over 12s, as they are doing in the United States? Is it time to look at whether we can use some of the FDA analysis to speed up that decision-making process so that by the time children come back in the autumn, schools are protected and we can be confident they'll be able to stay open?
People are nodding their heads during that. So how can they say that they're not considering? I think they're just being very technical about saying, oh no, there's no plan to roll out, because they literally don't have a bill or whatever it's called written out yet. But clearly they're talking about it. They're testing.
Of course, yeah. That's what they always do, is they bat back the suggestions that they're planning to do something that might be controversial, whilst at the same time doing the work that would allow them
to roll out this thing that's
This is
controversial.
ridiculous.
So yeah, I didn't know that a petition could be just flatly rejected
yeah.
like that without
I
the
wonder how
ability
many
to get
signatures it
signatures or
got.
whatever.
I
Did you
wonder-
know that that petition existed?
Yeah, someone was circulating it. But it says we only reject petitions that don't meet the petition standards. I don't know. But there's another
So today
one. There's
I was
another one circulating. It says do not vaccinate children against COVID-19 until phase 3 trials are complete. And this one has 39,590 signatures.
40,000.
Yeah.
So a couple days ago at the shops, a local to the village who I've known for years here, I ran into him, and clearly I wasn't wearing a mask because I don't wear a mask because I'm exempt, and you can't ask me why I'm exempt. It's illegal. You can't ask me for proof. So anyway, I was in the shops without a mask, and this old boy's got his mask on, and he asked me, "Hey, where's your mask?" I said, "Oh, I'm not wearing one. I'm exempt." He said, "Oh, really? When are you getting your jab?" He then asked me, and I say, "I'm not getting one." And he said, "Why not?" And I said, "Because I don't want to be experimented on with gene therapy." And he said, "You Americans with your queer ideas." And this is in front of a bunch of shoppers queuing up at the shops. And so I just said, "Yep, that's it. That's the ticket. Yep, okay." And then I just kind of walked out. And then as I'm walking out, he's like, "Send my regards to Lillian and the kids." Da 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 da. And it's just so funny. The phrase "believe the science" is really just believe the TV.
Yeah,
I
follow
think.
the science is just follow the authority that's telling you what to do.
Yeah.
It doesn't even matter if they're scientists or not.
Yeah, yeah.
Is Bill
And then-
Gates a scientist?
And then at work, I was on a call with like 6 other people.
Mm-hmm.
And the topic came up again, and everyone was like, "I got mine, Jeb. I'm getting mine, blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah." And then someone who knew that I'm a skeptic had to probe. I was going to stay quiet the whole time,
Yeah.
not say anything.
Hey,
Go on, Felipe.
Felipe.
Go on, Felipe. When are you getting your jab, huh? And I just said, "I'm not getting my jab." And then so everyone chimed in like, "Why not? Do you not believe in vaccines?" And I said, "I believe in vaccines, but I don't believe in experimental gene therapy." And so then they said, "Not all of them are gene therapy, and you can pick the one that you want."
Yeah, the one with blood clots. That one.
Yeah.
That segues into mine. The one where the BBC presenter Lisa Shaw died from blood clots after having the COVID vaccine. She had the AstraZeneca, which is the one that is the Oxford.
Is the one that
Chimpanzee
isn't
one.
is not gene therapy, but it's not traditional.
But it's been causing blood clots
right.
in under 50s, so younger people.
So go on, your first story.
Okay, so yeah, The Sun reported this, sort of the Daily Mail, that Lisa Shaw from, was it Newcastle, died from blood clots. It says, after having the AstraZeneca COVID vaccine, her family say. Yeah, it says her relatives were devastated and said that there is, that she got the COVID jab and got a blood clot from it. So it sounds like her relatives are convinced that it had to do with the COVID jab. And everyone else seems to relate that. Experts stressed that cases of blood clots linked to the vaccine
Are rare.
extremely rare, right?
So do they give numbers though?
Yeah, so then the Daily Mail one actually had better numbers. So I'm going to pull that one up. So
The
that was
Daily Mail is not reliable.
It's not reliable.
not
Right.
reliable.
It actually is a lot. It has more information than a lot of the other ones I've seen. So
Just read the bullet points for the Daily Mail. I love their practice.
the
of-
reiteration of the same thing, just in
Yeah.
bullet points. So she died aged 44 after suffering blood clots following the COVID AstraZeneca jab. People under 40 are being offered an alternative. Oh, it just went away.
Alternative to the
To
AstraZeneca.
AstraZeneca, following reports of extremely rare blood clots on the brain. Extremely rare, except they're changing the advice now. It says more than 330 cases of a rare clotting disorder have been spotted among 24.2 million recipients of the jab, or around 1 in every 75,000 people. 58 patients have died.
1 in every how many?
75,000.
Who get that jab?
Who
get
get
a
that
blood
jab.
clot?
Yeah. And 58 died from it.
So of the ones that got the blood clots, only a fraction of those die.
Yes.
So 1 out of 75,000 is 0.001%.
Yeah, so very rare.
So it is very rare.
Yeah, but it just makes me wonder, how does that compare to the mortality rate with COVID? Like then how contracting COVID and then dying.
It's definitely, yeah. Let's see, if you grant 1%, then it is 100 times more likely that you'll die from COVID than from the vaccine, from that vaccine.
So then then the question
for
is
getting a blood clot, because one of those 75,
Right.
not all of those 75,000, or those 1 in 75,000 die from the blood clot.
It says 1 out of every 75,000 people get this rare clotting disorder.
Yep, and then out of those, some die and
Yeah,
some don't.
only 58 patients have died, according to this. So it's very,
So it's
very
probably
small.
it's probably even less than 100th of.
But then the question that I'm sure her relatives are thinking and wanting to know
Yeah.
is, if she didn't get the vaccine, would she be alive today? Would she then have contracted COVID and died?
Yeah.
Who knows? You don't know. So the question really
You
is,
don't know. You don't know.
do you voluntarily take something that you could die from, or do you try to do your best to avoid it, and maybe you get it, someone gives it to you? Like that's the risk that you'd have to take. And for me personally, I'm not going to want to voluntarily put myself, like you said, and be experimented on. I'd rather risk it and get it late, get COVID.
Well, I mean, the thing that would make it comparable is what are the chances of getting COVID
Right.
first?
It's pretty high because
Right.
it's highly infectious.
And then if you get COVID, what are the chances of dying in your age group?
Right.
So in our age group, 30 to 40, do you know?
It's like
It's not even a percent.
Something.
It's maybe 0.001.
Yeah.
So then if you tack on that not everyone gets it, it's probably around the same
Yeah.
as the risk of dying from the.
Right.
So
The
you don't
jab.
gain for
Right.
our age group.
Yeah, it seems like.
For the older age group, where the mortality
is
is
higher.
like, isn't it double digits for some age groups, like 10%?
Maybe for above 80, yeah.
Yeah, so if you're above 80 and the risk of death from the vaccine is even lower, then it makes sense,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
And you have so little left to live anyway.
Yeah, I guess.
So I can get behind that, maybe. If I was maybe above 80, I might consider it.
That's why it's really important to just weigh your risk.
Yeah.
And that's why
To do a
children-
risk assessment. Isn't that what Brits love
They
doing?
love that. But children
no one's doing a
are
risk.
at very, very low risk.
Yeah.
In fact, that's what Jeremy Hunt just said. Like, they don't
But this is what they're
suffer.
going to argue, is that they're a transmission
That's what
pathway
he said,
to the
but-
vulnerable.
The adults should get it then. Why do the children have to get it?
So
If all
then
the
the
adults
next
got the
thing they would
vaccine-
say is that having a vaccine doesn't guarantee that you're not going to get COVID.
So then what's the point of having everyone get a vaccine?
I think they would say, does it reduce the likelihood that you'll get it? Isn't that what they'll say?
I don't know. I thought that reduces the likelihood of dying from it. So it doesn't
Oh.
reduce the likelihood of getting it. It just reduces the severity of their symptoms.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So all right. So it reduces, the likelihood of severe symptoms and ergo
So
death.
then therefore,
So they're protected then.
yeah, they're protected. Why
Hmm.
do the children have to get it?
I guess even though it diminishes the likelihood that they die,
Mm-hmm.
there's still a chance that they die. So to reduce the chances even further, they must destroy all transmission pathways, children being one of them. Peace.
So these people were the ones who fought 2 world wars.
I know. We must keep everyone locked down. We must not hug. We must not touch, because that increases the risk factor by 0.0001%.
That's the other thing that I
death.
was trying to understand is how are they supposed to know if the vaccines are actually working if the mortality rate is so low already? Like, how much will it have to improve for them to know that it's actually working?
I don't know.
You know, like, it just seems like so few people have. Anyway.
Man, the mainstream media, if you consume mainstream media, you hear the same message from everywhere.
Yeah.
And you just believe it.
Yeah.
Oh, the vaccines are really working and
I
they're
know.
safe, and that is that bubble of normality is impossible to pop. It's near impossible to pop.
Yeah.
There's one guy at work who I commiserate who's like completely awake.
Okay.
And he told me he's brought his family to tears over his resistance to the vaccine. His wife works for the
my
NHS, and they're just all gung-ho and
Yeah.
zealous about it. And he's like, I'm not touching that. And there's just a war in the family over it.
Oh, that's too bad.
But yeah, he's being very courageous and firm about it. He's not taking it. This is crazy. Anyway, what's your next story?
Well, this was really related to earlier about the school and the teaching, because this video is...
Is that where they all give their pronouns?
No. This is an 8th grade... This is an 8th grade Portland, Oregon teacher speaking to fellow educators.
Do you know people used to say that I have a Oregon accent?
Really?
A very standard, non-identifiable American accent.
I could hear it, yeah. So, anyway, so basically, if you don't homeschool your kids, you should consider it. But this is what's going
As
on
a
right now.
former
Okay.
school teacher, I say homeschool. Thanks. 10,000 shares.
Catherine Watkins, 8th grade humanities teacher at Cedar Park Middle School, and my pronouns are she, her, we, and us.
I told you it's the one where
I'm
they
going to
give...
say something that's not nice and not sweet,
That's not the
but
point
it's
of it.
true. If you're not evolving into an anti-racist educator, you're making yourself obsolete in this field of profession. Our district is only getting browner and browner with our children. And so if, obviously you can't change your melanin, all right? But you can change your mind so that you can actually function in a district that is full of BIPOC children. So if you're being resistant, I understand that. But you're going to have to eventually come to the light. Because if you're going to keep with those old views of colonialism, it's going to lead to being fired, because you're going to be doing damage to our children, trauma. And so as we fire the teachers who sexually abuse our children, we will be firing the teachers who do racist things to our children, traumatize them. And while our district might not be completely on there, OEA is working on it. All right, NEA is working on it. And so it's just a matter of time. So it's like you either evolve or dissolve. You've got to start walking with us.
Oh my goodness. So do you guys understand what's happening here? Is she's saying that you have to be on the woke anti-racism bandwagon or you're going to get fired. You're on the same level as sexual predators.
That's right.
If you believe in
if you're a critic
Western
of
civilization.
critical race theory.
And that's where, how the classics are getting canceled now.
In universities, they're
universities.
canceling classical departments.
Exactly. And then like you mentioned about the Church of England is getting rid of their institutionally racist statues.
Any
whatever.
sort of pews or stained glass windows or statues that were made by slave owners are coming down.
So these teachers, they're not talking about how to teach their children how to learn and read, and they're talking about how to program their children to understanding that they belong in this victimhood status. That's what I hear.
Can't change your melanin, but you can change your mind.
That is true. I agree with that.
I know, but they say it in a different. They mean something completely different
yeah.
than us.
Yeah, exactly. So once again, I was listening to Mike Rowe. He was sharing a story of
Story time
of
with
a
Mike
very
Rowe.
famous baseball player who is a
Nolan
really
Ryan.
good batter, and he apparently was Hispanic, half Hispanic, and because he was half, his father was white. He played in the major leagues because no one knew he was Hispanic. Because if they knew back then, he would have been into the Hispanic leagues.
Yeah.
And so that's just one example.
What was his name? Do you remember?
See, this is where I don't know.
Come
the sport.
on, man.
No, I don't remember. Can you look it up?
I don't know. There's so many.
Are there?
Yeah.
What if I just...
The baseball is now dominated by Hispanics.
Yeah. He said that his uncle taught him how to play, and his uncle struck out Babe Ruth at one point. Which I don't know why.
Oh. Is it Roberto?
No, he's got a white name.
Oh, all right. I won't know then. I don't know who had a white name but was really Hispanic. Sorry.
Yeah, he was half. I wish. I just don't. These things don't stick in my brain because I'm not really into sports and I never heard the name before. So anyway,
so that was your second story.
Robertson. Okay, so that was my second story. Was just these educators are totally on the woke bandwagon, and I feel like if you are an intentional Christian,
intentional,
yes.
What does that even mean?
Like intentional parenting. You've never
what
heard
does
of
that
intentional
mean?
parenting?
I've heard it, but I don't know what it means.
It just means that if you care about your child's
is that
future,
like saying if you're a diligent person?
Yeah. If you care,
why
about
invent
the way
another
your
word
children
if
are gonna...
diligent already exists? Why call it intentional? Is that to contrapose unintentional? Like I'm an unintentional Christian, or unintentional parent, unintentional educator?
Yeah, unintentional parenting. I think is something that.
What is that?
That's just where you don't
think
about what you're doing. Yeah, you just raise them because you're lazy. You just feed them KFC every day and things like that. But anyway, if you are serious about your children's education, I think it's time to not send them to these schools. You know, and it's way past time not to send them to these schools.
But I was thinking about that the other day because we went to that homeschooling holiday conference.
Yeah.
And I was reminded at how few English people do the homeschooling thing.
I know.
The majority foreigners like us.
It's such a huge
So what's your theory?
Here.
What's your theory? What's the main reason why?
The Brits are very they're just settled. They are content with mediocre. I mean, look at the NHS.
Wow, what an insult.
Is that not true? They're the customer service.
Everyone on our channel thinks that I'm the ogre and the savage of the family that insults everyone. But the truth is quite the contrary.
What? I don't know. They would sacrifice the level of education
point the finger at the camera.
In order to make sure that their child is raised in a socially acceptable manner. Okay? So they're willing to sacrifice a level of education or academically in order to fit in.
Yeah.
And I think mainly British people they don't want, the worst thing you can do for a Brit is to not fit in. So homeschooling is just like way out there for them.
I think the average Brit is institutional in the sense that they love institutions.
Yeah.
So the institution there exists for education. Go to the institution. They must exist for a reason.
Yeah.
They must get trained. They must know what they're doing.
But
Trust.
I'm sure this
Trust
is
in
happening
institution.
now.
Every time we say that, though, we get a bunch of people say, "You really think Brits trust institutions? Come on, what about Brexit? What Brexit. Sorry.
Brexit.
I always say
Brexit.
Brexit
Yeah.
because we say exit in the U.S. So Brexit. Come on, doesn't that prove that we don't koto? Is it koto?
Kowtow.
Kowtow. Koto, kowtow. Kowtow to institutions. I think pushed to the edge, you will resist institutions, but the normal status quo is
Yeah.
to follow institutions.
Yeah.
Whereas the status quo for an American is to buck the institution.
Yeah, exactly. So we're just naturally more rebellious,
Naturally skeptical of institutions.
willing to strike out on our own, be a bit more independent.
Yeah. Okay, so what's the next story? Come on.
Okay.
This is a long podcast.
I wasn't doing the majority of the talking. It's okay.
It's all right. It's all good. They'll enjoy
Okay,
it.
this last... Oh, wait, I just clicked on this. This one here.
Last story, folks. And now coming, a Florida man
It's a funny one, okay?
has battled an alligator to save his puppy.
It says toxic masculinity. This guy is hilarious. And this is just a little comedy here.
Little-
Something funny to make it a little bit lighter,
Here we go.
lighthearted.
Apparently, I've got a lot of toxic masculinity as well, which isn't woke at all. If you don't know what toxic masculinity is, apparently masculine traits like being aggressive and being good at fighting, they're seen as bad these days. But they're only seen as bad because for the last 50 years we haven't had bears and Nazis and Vikings to fight. We don't know that they're not coming back. You know, there's only a certain amount of oil and internet left, and then we descend into this Mad Max dystopia. Then the Vikings, they'll smell weakness, they'll come back, they'll start with this again. What are you going to do if the Vikings land and they're down in the village and you run up to the men, all these non-toxic men, you're like, guys, can you help us? The Vikings have come back and they're down in the village committing some really large microaggressions. And all these non-toxic guys are frantically trying to assemble an online petition out of twigs. Trying to word it so it doesn't sound anti-immigration against Vikings.
Oh, that's so good.
Toxic masculinity.
That's like Scottish, right?
I don't know. I'm not going to offend anyone by guessing.
I love accents.
But it makes a solid point. Yeah, the
Leo curse.
oil and the internet will run out one day, and we will need those skills again.
And then the aggressive Vikings will smell weakness.
Yep.
And then the weakness will just be like, I don't want to offend.
Yeah. Except the Vikings in this instance will be wearing turbans.
No. I don't think so. It could be the Chinese.
Yeah, that's true. They'll be eating sweet and sour chicken.
They don't have that there. That's not a Chinese dish.
Oh, you've shattered my whole vision of what China is. Okay, any final thoughts?
Well, I just think that lack of masculinity is one of the core problems in today's society. Because if we're talking about COVID, let's say, imagine a weak male and married to a woman, and the woman is naturally gonna be a rule follower, or maybe a Karen, or whatever. She's not going to push back against this thing. It's not really, I think, in the nature of women to rebel against this society of institutions, okay? So I think the only way that women get on board is if they have a strong male in their life to say, look, we need to do this, or just trust me. I'm just thinking in terms of my own experience, because I think it would be easier to just be like, oh, yeah, let's just do the vaccine and we'll wear masks. It's not a big deal. We'll just go along with everyone. Everyone else is doing it anyway.
Do you feel you have that instinct?
I think I do.
Yeah.
And I think that most women wouldn't feel confident enough to buck the trend in what everyone else is doing if they don't have a strong man saying, no, we're going to do it this way. And you don't feel afraid. I think that's the other thing is women are more fearful. And I remember in the beginning, in COVID, I was really afraid. Remember?
Yeah, I do. Don't go outside.
I was pregnant, and
Don't you dare.
I didn't want Felipe to go outside
We
at
were
all.
wet wiping all the groceries.
All the groceries. When he came back home, he took these
Gloves.
antibacterial wipes, wiped down everything. I had a cousin who was washing her croissants before eating them. Like
They were putting their clothing in garbage bags and
they were
burning
like
them.
burning their clothes when they got home.
It was a full-on panic.
It was really scary, and my cousins are doctors and stuff, and they were saying that like it was something they've
People
never
are
seen
dying.
before.
They've never seen it.
Yeah, so I was like really, really afraid, and I think I would have been happy. The savior would have been, oh, the vaccines are coming, and wear your mask.
Remember that Christmas is coming, and the vaccine will save us. It was like Jesus was replaced by the vaccine.
That reminds me of that
Boris.
vaccine saves projection onto the Rio de
Jesus
Janeiro
statue.
Jesus statue.
Yeah.
Can you believe that? That
It's
is
idolatry. They say they don't believe in anything, but they have faith. They're religious, believe me.
Vaccine saves? No, clearly it doesn't, because you have to keep getting a second booster, a third booster. You still have to wear your mask. Like, you still have to then vaccinate the children. Like, it doesn't save anything. What is it saving?
The only thing that COVID has brought that I appreciate is
this song.
Then sang Moses and the children of Israel this song unto the Lord. COVID-19, 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 blow the wind of God from the state of Washington to the state of Maine to Brownsville, Texas, and the Temple Fork. Today, we speak to this atmosphere. Today, burn this thing. This virus hates heat. You just burn this thing. Burn. I call for a supernatural heat wave. Straight out of hell. Burn. COVID-19.
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 It's a liturgy. It's like call and response.
Did you not realize he's making the same mistake the Pharisees made?
You don't do it. You don't do it. You get
Out of here.
now. Burn. You don't do it. You don't do it. You don't do it. You get out of here. Burn this thing. COVID-19. COVID-19.
His followers don't seem very convinced. So.
No.
COVID-19. It's like they're sleeping.
But this was done last year.
Oh, it was so long ago, yeah.
And COVID is not gone.
And you'll never be back.
Never be back.
But like what I was saying is like, why would he say that the fire coming from hell to kill this thing? Like,
To kill COVID.
what? It doesn't make any sense.
That is the single greatest gift that COVID has brought, I think.
No, there have been a lot of things that have come out of it that have been really good.
Yeah,
for us,
and yeah, the
so.
return to local is very good. Okay, final thoughts.
No, this has been a long podcast.
Thank you for sticking around.
We're gonna try to do some live streams while we podcast, and they're only open to our Patreon patrons.
Yes, if you want to engage with us live on the podcast, become a patron at patreon.com/
The Postmodern Family.
There it is. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.